Welcome to my analysis of Game 9 from the World Chess Championships. Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces against Fabiano Caruana. And only 4 games to go now until they get to the tie-break stage. So time is running out for a decisive result. In this game, Magnus had the white pieces and he came out fighting with the move c4. So the English opening again. It was quite funny. I had a bet with a friend, and my friend bet me that Magnus would go 1f4 in this game. I gave him 10 to 1 odds, so thank you for that, Ali. Very kind of you. After c4, we have e5, and we follow the opening that occurred, a couple of days ago, really. And this is the variation of the English, which I've discussed in a previous video. Traditional move now, pawn to g3, and here Fabiano plays the most principled move. Fabiano being a very principled player, he likes playing in the centre of the board. If he can gain space in the centre, then he will do so, and that's why the move d5 suits his style, getting a reversed Sicilian, again as I demonstrated in a previous video. So it's interesting to see what Magnus is really trying to do in the opening stages. I mean, he was playing d4, but he wasn't really getting anywhere against the Queen's Gambit. So his team had obviously prepared something in this variation over the period of 2-3 days where, you know, these guys were fighting. The team behind Magnus and Fabiano, of course, works on the opening. And Magnus's idea was bishop g2, and now this current trendy move which Fabiano played before. Fabiano being, I guess you could say, quite predictable during the match about what he's going to play. He's sticking to what he believes are good moves, and this move made popular by Grischuk. Now, again, this is quite a key moment because when you have this configuration of the bishop here and a pawn here, a natural move to play and a tactic to look out for is knight takes e5. And this often works for 2 reasons. 1, the pressure against d5. You're releasing the bishop here. And 2, you have moves like d4 as well, forking these 2 pieces. And this is a common technique to get your material back. And also, positionally, it's often thought to help white because you win a very strong central pawns, and central pawns are generally worth more than pawns on the edge of the board, hence why I throw Harry up the board and sacrifice him in a lot of my games. But this is not so clear because black can take on c3 here, and now white can win a pawn by bishop takes c6, and here that is a check, so black has to recapture. And now something like b takes c3, but white's lost this fantastic light square bishop. And in the English opening, and normally when you fianchetto, which is this pyramid setup over here, you want to keep your light square bishop because now your king becomes very weak, and black can play something along the lines of queen d5, knight to f3 forced, bishop h3, stopping white from castling, and this position looks very unpleasant for white. For the sake of one measly pawn, I wouldn't want to be playing this as white. I mean, black can quickly get a rook to the e-file, etc. So Magnus's idea, instead, he just castles, and black does the same, castles here, and here, the original time this was played, I think there was some idea of knight g5. I mean, again, there are a number of ways white can win pawns in these lines, and another way here, very weird combination, is taking on d5, knight g5 as mentioned, and when the queen retreats, knight takes h7 is a very weird tactic because we have a check here. But black gets very decent compensation here with rook to e8, and this knight is stranded over here. I mean, okay, it can jump back to g5, but again, these lines have all been worked out by both players, and it works out absolutely fine for black. I'll show you why. Knight g5, only move. Otherwise, that knight really truly be trapped. The tactical point is after queen takes, d4 is played, and we attack the queen with a bishop. So a counter tactic, queen h5, pawn takes bishop, and now something like rook d8, the bishop again coming over to h3 in some variations, maybe a knight into d4, and again this is great compensation for a pawn for black. And when Magnus is not the kind of player, as we saw he nearly lost his last game, he's not the kind of player who likes being under pressure like that. Fabiano nearly won the previous game by giving up a pawn to get this pressure. And this is one thing I've noticed about Magnus. He doesn't like being attacked that way. So, if his opponents can ever get him into a situation like that, I think he'd be very uncomfortable. But he won't allow it without a fight. So d3, and now rook to e8, again following the game from a couple of rounds ago. And here, we now had the first new move of this match, bishop g5. And again, this is a good developing move, and you're trying to tempt the f-pawn to move, because if a move like f6 here, well then queen to b3 takes advantage of the newly exposed king on the light squares there. So you're trying to provoke a weakening pawn move. So knight takes c3 is black's response, and this does improve white's pawn structure, because now white's moving another pawn into the middle, and as I said before, central pawns are very useful. f6, and now Magnus was playing still in his preparation clearly, bishop back to c1. The d2 square is actually better for the knight. The knight will often want to come to this square, opening up the bishop, and then the knight maybe comes into b3, c4 or e4, one of these more active squares. So even though this may look a bit odd, after bishop e6, bishop b2, you can see it makes a lot of sense. And around here, I actually thought that, now Fabiano went into a deep think. Carlsen was up on time, so he had this prepared with his team. And around here, I was thinking, for maybe the first time in the match, with the white pieces, Magnus has got a position he probably wants to have. Magnus doesn't like too many risks, as we've said in the opening stages. Not that he can't play tactical positions, but he doesn't tend to go for those kind of things. Magnus wants some kind of strategic advantage. And here he's got a potential mobile centre. The bishop is very good on b2, even though it looks bad, it controls d4. And Magnus can try to come forwards with his pawns in the middle. And this is, I would say, strategically a bit better for white. But black does have more space, having a pawn on his fourth rank, the fifth rank from white side, and active pieces. So it shouldn't be that bad. Now, there are a couple of moves here. Bishop b6, very logical, because after d4, black obviously doesn't have to lose a tempo by moving that bishop. And now black has to be a bit careful, because this pawn is defended, so you can't win it. And if white has a chance to play pawn e4 and maybe d5, those pawns are really going to start rolling up the board. So black needs to do something. So black does. Black plays bishop d5. For the time being, holding up e4, and also trying to neutralize the bishop on g2. We talked about that powerful piece, how it can really strike across the diagonal there. So this move is very sensible. Magnus now goes queen c2, again renewing the threat of e4. Black takes on d4. This opens up the rook, controlling the e4 square. On the downside, it loses another central pawn. So Magnus now has two central pawns, and I think most traditional players would prefer this structurally, including probably Fabiano. I think Fabiano loves his centres, and he probably would like this position as white. And okay, they repeated once, queen b3, bishop d5, and now queen d1. And again, Magnus still in his prep at this moment. I think the speed he is playing the moves. And this is now, what are we are? We're on move 17. Now, Fabiano's next decision is a bit of a, I would say, erroneous error here. I think it would have been more sensible to try and just hold the centre. This bishop is a very good piece. And controlling the e4 square is important, but that's well under control. And I would have thought something around here along the lines of just, you know, queen d7, rook d8, and maybe you can move the knight a5 and try even play c5. Something like this, just putting all the pieces ready for what white's going to do is a very decent way to play. But Fabiano decides to capture on f3, which is quite a logical move in principle, because when you're under pressure, and I think black is slightly under pressure, as we said, because of the pawns and the potential of them coming forwards, you want to relieve things. You want to simplify the position down. You want to make it as easy as you can for you. Let's just, you know, take that tension out of the position. You're black here, a draw is okay, simplify. But it's also extremely risky because we've talked about the power of white's bishop on g2. And now this bishop becomes unopposed. So, okay, white throws a check in first, and now he takes on f3 with a bishop. And this is really an absolute beast, especially as black has played f6. Again, I've mentioned this in a couple of previous videos, that when one side puts pawns on a certain colour squares, here black squares, it makes the opposite colour squares, the light squares, weakened. And white has a light square bishop. So, you know, this bishop has great sort of range now all across the board. So I would have thought this is precisely a Magnus position. Knight takes d4 is black's idea. Yes, we have opposite colour bishops, meaning that if we get to any kind of endgame, so if the queens come off, the drawing chances are extremely high. But one thing to bear in mind with opposite colour bishops, black has a dark one, white has a light one, is that in the middle game, this gives better attacking chances to both sides, because your bishop cannot be opposed. It can't be blocked by an opposing bishop. So if you keep the queens on, generally opposite colour bishops positions lead to very aggressive attacking play, and that's precisely what the situation is here with these bishops. And after e3, good move, queen e5, bishop takes b7, getting a pawn back, rook d8, rook d1, centralizing. Magnus has a nice position, and it's quite intriguing to see what happens here, because, you know, he joked in the press interview a couple of days ago that this was quite funny. Someone asked him, who's your favourite player? Who's your favourite player of history? Magnus Carlsen. And you know what his answer was? You know, Magnus said, my favourite player from history is myself 3-4 years ago, which of course brought out quite a lot of laughter. And I think he realises that 3-4 years ago, he may have had that edge, you know, that he maybe is slightly missing at the moment. This position here is definitely better for white. Black's bishop is dead because of that e3 pawn. There's no way you can really get through this structure. So this bishop is very bad. But as we've noticed, white's bishop can jump around. It can attack on these diagonals eventually. This is a very nice compact pawn structure that white has here. The black king only has 3 pawns guarding it. And it's certainly, to me, seems a bit unpleasant. I mean, black's pawns are not very good over here. And, you know, I think 3-4 years ago, Magnus would have pushed a lot more than he currently did in this game. Not giving too much away. Maybe I just did. Sorry about that. But you probably know anyway. And let's just see. Well, queen e7 is, you know, black going super solid. And now h4. And this is a very good move. And this is using your majority, 4 pawns, to fight against the minority, 3 pawns. When you have a majority, this is a standard way to proceed. And this pawn can maybe be used to come all the way to h6. And then black will have to make a decision to do something with his g-pawn. Again, that would weaken the king a little bit more. Or if black plays a horrible move like h5, that pawn becomes very weak. And the same goes if he ever plays h6. Remember, if you put pawns on one colour square, it weakens the other colours. And imagine that pawn going to h6. Let's say h6 at some point. Now this diagonal becomes really weak. And Magnus will probably put this bishop on b1, the queen on c2, threatening to come into h7. And black no longer can play a move like g6 because the pawn on h7 is not defending that square. Typical techniques these are to attack. So g6 was a move that Fabiano decided he wanted to play here. And the next move is certainly I think a move that shows a bit of lack of patience. Again, I'm not one to talk. I'm very impatient in chess, in life, in everything I do. But, you know, Magnus is not. He's known for his patience. He's the world champion. He's the best player in the world. And here, I think he should have just waited a little bit. Maybe improve the pieces. Something like bishop c6. Let's just do this. And, you know, if black tries to liquidate by swapping rooks off, you can even swap these off. And remember, the queens are still on the board. And after some infiltration, like queen f7, black seems to be in a very tricky situation. He can't really move any of his pieces. White can now try to play h5 at the right moment, and he's really tied down. The black king's weak. You can't move your queen anywhere because checkmate is a threat. So, to me, the move played in the game, h5, instead of this slow build-up, maybe even a move like a4. Let's just play a4. I mean, this is not stupid either. Because at some point, maybe I want to play a5, just slowly improving my position. If I get my pawn to a6, it must help me. Because, you know, just little moves. Just don't rush. Instead, he played h5. And this is really un-Magnus-like. Maybe this is showing his frustration from the way the match is going. And I have to say, Fabiano's next move was the computer-like brave move. And he now took on h5. Very good move. It looks ugly because you weaken your king. But also now, maybe black can get counterplay on the g file. The pawn coming to h4, opening up the white king. And this is something that Magnus didn't have to allow. I mean, he could have first, if he wanted to do it another way, he could have gone bishop f3 first. So after h5, he can take that pawn. And this is a very good decision from Fabiano. And you can see that Fabiano is not cracking against the pressure that Magnus is putting on him. So queen c4, you can't allow that pawn to come here, so you control that square. And now another good move, f5. And this guards the h4 square, so the h-pawn can now threaten to come up. And bishop f3, h4 occurs. And all of a sudden, whose king is weaker? It becomes clear that after one exchange and a capture on h4, a check on h8, that white's king is no longer as secure as it would like to be. So again, this to me was the turning point. Magnus just lacking that little bit of patience. I think it shows frustration the way things are going. And after some more good moves, queen f4, bishop now comes to c5. Lovely move because suddenly it wants to get to a diagonal where it's active. Rook g1. And now, okay, maybe bishop d6 is a bit better here, but it doesn't change so much. Queen a4. Certainly black is fine after the next move, f4. And this is again exchanging pawns off, and white's king is too weak now because he's played this move. If he had, you know, if his pawn was still on g3, this would not be possible. So, okay, Magnus grabs a pawn, and the point of Fabiano's play is that he gets his pawn back, and the white king, I believe, is too weak for any serious winning chances. Yes, there's a passed a pawn, but that can be well defended as we see. Pawn to a4, queen f6, and the first thing that black aims to do is to threaten to get the queen behind that pawn. Bishop to d1, defending the pawn, and now we have queen e5, and again, opposite colour bishop endings with so little material on the board. As I mentioned, an Elior's drawn. Magnus can't really allow this queen to stay on the board because it is coming in to the position. And here, okay, Magnus plays on because he has the more dangerous passed pawn. But as we see, bishop d4 totally stops that one from advancing. The only way that white can aim to win this one is to get his king to somewhere like b7 and then play a7. But there's too little material on the board here. And with some sensible defensive play, we just wait, or Fabiano simply waits here, and there's nothing really that can be done. You can see white tries this plan, and it looks like he makes a bit of progress, but Fabiano has it all under control. And the c-pawn is now defended indirectly, because if you take that one, I take this pawn with check. White needs to keep this pawn on the board. And the important drawing idea is that as soon as white plays a7, you take this pawn, and now you play this move h5. And if white takes that pawn on h5, king to f5, and you lose your last pawn. If the bishop moves anywhere else, well, the king comes forwards. If the bishop stays controlling that square, this can't work because the c-pawn now comes. And actually white is in danger of losing. So the game ended in a similar fashion. They danced around the board a little bit, but at some point there was nothing that could be done, and they agreed to draw because there's no progress that can be made. So, you know, well held from Fabiano. And I think what has been shown to me at the moment is Carlsen is getting frustrated, and Fabiano is showing some really good nerves. Most people crack against the Magnus effect because of his reputation, his standard of play, his track record. He's world champion. He's intimidating. He's got energy. Fabiano's not cracking. Fabiano, to me, is showing no fear, you know, on the board. Maybe he fears Magnus, as someone did mention, but he doesn't fear the positions he's getting. He seems to have supreme faith in his own ability to hold, and this is really important in such a match. And I think a lot of people got scared there, but moves that showed his confidence were this taking on h5, and on the other hand, Magnus playing h5 when he didn't need to rush that idea show a bit of instability coming into Magnus's game. So there we are. We have 3 games left. They're both tied with draws in every round. Is it going to get to playoffs? Well, the current odds for the match, and let's just bring up the odds. And this is like from a bookmaker's. It gives a general feel about what other experts are thinking about the game. And the odds at the bottom there, we can see the draw is nearly even. It's 17 to 20, meaning that most experts now think this match will end in a 6-all draw. That was my tip before the tournament. I said if you're going to have a bet, that's the bet you should do. I gave the odds. You would have got 5-6 to 1, so I would have made you a bit of money if you got that bet down. So you thank me later, buy me a beer, whatever you fancy doing, take me out for a curry, whatever. So the draw now looking likely, and you can see that basically Magnus and Fabiano to win within the 12 games, they're both now about equal. They're both now equal. If one of them wins one game out of the last 3, it's probably gonna win the World Championship. So the tension is rising. Who's going to deal with it better? It's going to well, I mean, they're both champions. It's going to be very interesting to see. So thank you for watching this video. Please do like, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll be back with more videos of this World Championship match when I get a chance. I may well be doing a long stream tomorrow. I believe it's a rest day. So I hope to catch you on my Twitch channel tomorrow. I'm thinking I might do a big Black Sunday, Black Friday. It's not Sunday, big Black Friday stream. And also Ginger GM, we could be offering lots of deals in our shop. So if you want to improve your chess, go over to the Ginger GM shop, where we're going to have some 50% deals coming in, 50% off deals coming into effect tomorrow. So you can grab yourself a good bargain and improve your chess by popping over there tomorrow. And I hope to see you during the stream. Thank you very much. I'll be back again soon. Cheers, goodbye, and well, I don't know what's going to happen in the match. Very interesting. Bye for now.